An A+ for that. I mean, how do I overcome that? Yeah, Heiko makes some very, very good points, some salient points, and I think where we all agree is having been on the anti-lockdown movement, we all agree in civil liberties. We all support the terrible things that happen in Gaza. We want an end to that. Which is where we all agree. But okay. Basically, what's happening in Epping, what Heiko says may be true in theory, may be true, and probably is true if you take it in a historical context. But the people of Epping are aware of the terrible crimes that happened in Rotherham.
People of Epping are racist, mate.
Okay. Rotherham, it happened in Telford, it happened all around it, courtesy of the police. Those wonderful bastions of civil liberties and the police who protect civil liberty and democracy, God help us. They remember this. There's horror stories coming from Rotherham. There's horror stories coming from Telford. And it wasn't just the type of crime, it was the length of time it went on for. Samantha Smith, who was a victim of Rotherham, she had the temerity to go on the Mark Stein show. You might remember Mark Stein used to be on GB News during the lockdown, a great guy, a great journalist. She had the temerity to go on to the Mark Stein show and tell her that she'd complained about grooming, but nothing was done about it. And the next day, what does she do? She gets a visit, a very impromptu visit from South Yorkshire Police. Basically, police intimidation, asking her why. Why would you go on the Mark Stein show? Because she complained about it for long. The people of Epping don't want an escalation of what happened in Rotherham, what happened in Telford. They are conscious that the police are more interested in community cohesion statistics than kids being raped, for God's sake. This is what's on their mind. And that statistic you give about 22% higher from
22 times.
22 times. It's an incredible statistic, but it's interesting in these communities.
22 times what?
In these communities where sexuality is more suppressed, and I talk about where they wear the burqa, where you can be turned on by seeing someone's nose, for example. It's interesting that rape seems to be higher in those countries where, in more open women's sexuality, in Western society, women's sexuality, the fashion emulates the human body, as Desmond Morris might say. So, although what Heiko's saying is very, very true in... Guys, I can't talk at the same time. What is very, very true in theory, but the people of Epping, this is what's on their mind. So it's not just the class issue of having them drafted into Epping and other places and hotel owners making a mint out of it. This is what's on their mind, and I can understand that, but I feel, and I reiterate, that the so-called asylum seekers, economic migrants, whatever you want to call them, I feel that they're being exploited. They'd be better off maybe in RAF Manston, where they've got a place, formerly Kent International Airport, than they would in the sleepy suburb of Epping. I'll hand over to someone else.
Sold the lie that everything's going to be great here. Just been helpful.
Heiko Khoo.
Okay, on the issue, an issue I took up with Adam during the course of last week was this issue about Rotherham. Rotherham, as you know, is the sort of the igniting flame for the anger around Tommy Robinson's campaigns to denigrate the Muslim community as responsible for rape gangs. And that Rotherham and Rochdale has been the means by which he has been able to advance his own political position and turn a significant section of the population into anti-Muslim and anti-Islamic orientation. And there's no doubt about that he's succeeded in doing that. It has succeeded in whipping up hatred against Muslims. Now, is it a fact that Rotherham in any way is associated with asylum seekers? Well, firstly, the Rotherham gangs, the rape gangs, the grooming gangs, they are long-standing members of the community. They run taxi firms, they run cafes, they run restaurants, and they drew a layer of children in care homes into their ambience. So one side is the care homes are not taking enough care over the children they're watching over. Second thing is the grooming gangs are able to get access to them and to manipulate those children. Third thing is that the community officials who should be defending the rights of those children are not involved or are scared of causing racial conflict within the community, and they're are complicit and involved. Now,
which Robinson did expose.
Yes. Now, rape gangs are not new in Britain. Grooming gangs are not new in Britain. There have been rape gangs organised by the Catholic Church over decades, possibly centuries.
That's right, that's right.
When I was at school in London in the 1960s and 70s, there were grooming gangs in nearly every public or grammar school in Britain. Even in secondary modern, I went to a secondary modern, there were some paedophiles operating as teachers inside the school. And it was a culture of paedophilia inside a layer of the teaching profession, and in particular in public schools. So Eton, almost every public school in Britain had a grooming gang scandal. Eton, Harrow, a friend of mine went to Slindon College in Sussex, which was run by a grooming gang. I remember going to the school with my friend. He invited me to go and visit one day, and the head teacher had a group of 12 and 13-year-old boys in his room smoking cigarettes, drinking and watching television. He would encourage them by watching pornography to have sex with each other, and then once they'd done that, drag them into a network of paedophile abuse throughout the whole period of their schooling. This was within the public sector. Oh, sorry, not the public sector, the public schools. In other words, for those who are unfamiliar, within the private schools in Britain. The Church of England was also notorious, as also were the Cub Scouts, for manipulating children into sexual abuse. So there is nothing that is per se racialized about sexual abuse. What is the distinction is the same thing about fears, is that since the Tommy Robinson, or better said, the grooming gang scandal in Rochdale and Rotherham came to the fore and was exposed largely, or partly at least, due to the work of Tommy Robinson and his allies, it became a racialised question. Then it became not only racialised, but also turned into a religious question. So they made out these were, I've been reading Tommy Robinson's latest book, which he didn't write, but it's got his name on it, and it claims, it mixes up the idea of rape gangs, Pakistani communities involved in rape gangs, and Islam. So he then turns it from Pakistani layers of the Pakistani community who are manipulating and grooming children and raping them to Muslim rape gangs. And then he turns it, and if you read through the book, it begins to shift. Firstly from Pakistani, secondly from grooming gang onto Muslim, and then eventually they start using the word Muslim rape gangs rather than, and in actual fact, of course, there is no support in Islam for raping children. There's no support in Islam. These people, according to any genuine Muslim, are criminals and are not Muslims. But of course, the point is that they need to whip it up to make out they are Muslim rape gangs. Unfortunately, what we have is a combination of genuine problems of integration between communities, genuine crises of shortage of housing, provision and resources, both for the children who suffer and for those who arrive in Britain and live in various live as migrant communities. There are problems in all these areas, exacerbated by the economic crisis in society, not only in Britain but internationally, and exacerbated by the wars and by the global conflicts. That creates
deliberate policy.
well, there are also deliberate policies as a consequence of the fact that the European population does not reproduce. They don't have children. They don't. Name me a country in Europe where they have a significant number of children. In Italy, hang on, in Italy, yes, they don't. In Italy and in Spain, one second, in Italy and in Spain, where traditionally people had 3 or 4 children. Now the birth rate does not equal even one point whatever.
Yeah, no Western
Sorry?
country reproducing.
What's that? What's that?
Yes. It's been
Well, in
deliberately
actual fact,
driven down
it's not
by
a salary question.
It's part
In
of
actual
it. It's part
fact,
of it.
no, it's not.
part of it.
Because
It is
because the poorest countries in the world are those with the highest birth rates.
Yes.
The poorest countries in the world have the most children.
And over
the
here as
wealthiest
well,
countries in the world have the least children. So it is a demographic associated with the dynamics of modern capitalism. That when people get wealthier, they have less children. That's a fact. Well, tell me the country, wealthy country, where they have loads of children.
Well,
Compare
definitely.
it with Somalia or India or Pakistan.
Affluent America,
It's normal.
they will have many, certain parts of
Yes,
affluent America, certain parts of affluent
In
society,
some
here,
part- in
they
some
will have
parts-
many children, 6,
In
7, 8
in
children,
some
even
parts
10 or 12.
of America, there are religious communities who
Yeah,
have
but
large numbers
also
of
here.
children.
Yeah,
Where?
also,
Where?
look at what's his name, who's the tough Tory guy. The Catholic,
Boris Johnson.
No, one of his cabinet.
It is a simple fact
He's got
that the
6
white
kids.
population of Europe, on average, have very few children, and therefore, from the standpoint of capitalist economics, you want to have people producing wealth who are of the age of working, and in order to do that, to gain profits, because the only profits in society, contrary to what we are told, come from people working, come from people making wealth, and therefore, because the Brits do not reproduce, nor do the Germans, nor do the French, nor do the Italians, nor do the Spanish, nor do the Hungarians. Some of the Poles do, but even they are cutting down on numbers. Consequence of that is the governments, the capitalist governments of Europe, have had a policy for a long period of time to migrate people from other countries into Europe in order to fill the labour gap inside society. That is policy.
Without the
That
agreement
is policy.
of the population.
Yes, without the agreement of the
Yes,
population.
so
But
underhand,
that is
and
policy.
it's been taken at
Yes,
a
it has-
supranational
Yes,
level
yes,
through the World Economic Forum,
because the,
through the United
the
Nations.
global capitalist institutions attempt to regulate global capitalism by organising regulation to migrate people from one corner of the world to another. Sorry?
Do you watch women's football? The finals on now.
No, I don't watch women's football. You can go watch it. Where's Adam gone? Adam, sorry, I've been speaking a long time. Adam should get up and say what he thinks. But the point I was making, and I said to you online, is the Rotherham rape gangs are not the same thing, and it's conflating and confusing to mix up the rape gangs with the migration of asylum seekers. It shouldn't be done, and those who are doing that, I think, are stoking up false fears and hatreds in society.
Heiko Khoo.
You're right, but it's still
Very, very good, yeah, and I don't know what sort of school you went to, but I mean, roughly, so I went to an Essex
State
school,
school.
but it sounds quite interesting watching pornography.
He went to
You didn't go into what sort of
Secondary modern
what was the sex education license? Sex education lesson? They must have been very, very
You know why you got
interesting.
to second money?
But basically, yeah. What Heiko's saying is very, very true about cultural issues, cross-cultural issues. Some of the people that are walking around Epping. As I say, the simple fact remains, from a pragmatic point of view, the people that are coming out of that hotel, numerous ones, are from a different culture, where they see the local English ladies, where, I mean, I understand, I know it's true that the age of consent in Saudi Arabia apparently is 7 years of age. Apparently in Somalia there is no age of consent.
There's hardly any Saudi asylum seekers, are there?
They're having babies.
Well, it's a very rich place after all.
Is that what you're suggesting?
But what you're saying is very, very true. But the fact remains now, the hotel, the council have decided unanimously to shut that hotel down. But what a lot of other councils are now going to say, they're quite likely to say is, hold on a minute, you've shut down the one in Epping, but you're now going to deport them to our area, so they become our problem. This is what's going to happen now. This is the reason Holly Whitbread and her father on Epping Council, who by the way are delaying elections because they know they're going to be booted out by Nigel Farage at the next election. This is the reason that hotel has stayed there so long, and it's got to boiling point. It's what's known in psychology as the boiled frog theory, or the normalcy theory, where the frog swims around and around and around, eventually gets to the point, I'm boiled to death. What's happened in Epping has been the boiled frog theory. So integration, as we know, takes a long time. I'm sure when the Normans invaded Britain, they had a massive impact on our language, but only a few thousand Normans stayed. But the Normans were responsible in many ways for creating the class system. Even in British establishment today, a lot of people in the army and in education, they have Norman names, de Belliere, La Mesurier. The Anglo-Saxons had a terrible time under normal Britain, which is why predominantly today Anglo-Saxon names, Smith, Browns, etc., are predominantly the bottom of the pile. So what I'm saying is integration takes years, if not centuries, of feudal civil wars, etc., etc. The last civil war we had here was in the 1640s.
What's your point, Mr.
This is taken. Look, if you've got anything to say, you can speak afterwards. Yeah, there's a difference in asking a question and just making silly remarks. Basically, so then what I'm saying, if that's anything to go by, but the Anglo-Saxons did keep they kept the legal system after the Norman conquest. But that's my point. Basically, all this is very well and good from class analysis, but the British people are a secular people. I mean, they're not a religious people. I think in last census, only 1%, despite me being of an Anglican background, only 1% of the English people go to church. They're not a religious people. So there is a religious point with them. When they see people walking around in pious religious relics and attire, they get a little bit afraid.
It's really great that you've been supporting people in Epping. I wanted to ask about the policing in Epping, because I've seen some absolutely horrendous, shocking, deeply shocking, where you get police driving in vans into protesters, and it's like seen as nothing. Well, these are white racists, so we can just run them over. I mean, I am shocked. If they were doing that against people in like Extinction Rebellion or XR or these other groups or Antifa, there'd be absolute uproar. Whereas white protesters, working class people.
There's not only the issue that Farage, love him or hate him, brought up about Antifa being escorted to and from Epping Station.
They weren't escorted.
It was for their own safety.
They were escorted. They were escorted.
Let me tell you,
they were escorted. They weren't bussed, but
Tommy Robinson was escorted into the park here as well by 50 police.
Well, there you go.
But what I will say is, I witnessed Essex police driving into people. There was one policeman driving a van, and I was banging on the window saying, "Stop! You're going to hit a toddler." And then she sped away in a panic and knocked 2 other people down. And if you don't believe me, Jamie Maguire, who is the local Reform councillor, had to perform first aid on the victim. I have photographs of the victim. So in many ways, as Farage, this riot was caused by police.
Yes.
They panicked. I've been a soldier. Anyone that's done crowd control, no, you do not antagonise people. You do not get the worst. The people that are the police that are in Epping.
How many people did they drive?
Let me speak. Your comments are not.
How many people did they drive there?
Basically,
How many people did they drive there?
More than one.
Sam, I think you to shut up and finish.
That's very unkind.
basically, the people and people got angry, and that's why they started kicking the police vans and breaking windows. The police will not tell you this. We know police aren't exactly known for their honesty, don't we?
Yeah,
etc., etc. We know the tyranny that the police will enforce during the lockdowns. They will enforce any tyranny. Yeah, whatever you want to call it. So basically, there's a lot that won't tell you, and the riots, everything came from that. So again, the people of Epping, there's been some horrific injuries. There's been multiple arrests. One police officer used his shield as a weapon to knock a guy's
smash someone in the face for
You don't
nothing.
do that. If you're an occupying force and you want to
disgusting.
get the TSG basically took over from the so-called SPG, who killed a guy in
Eric Blair.
Southall,
Sorry,
Blair Peach.
Blair Peach.
Blair Peach was a Maori guy who they killed. So they but then
Well,
they're no
Lionel
better.
Blair.
They're walking around like they will be at the Notting Hill Carnival next week in quasi-military fatigues, like they're expecting a war.
Yes.